So, hey there, and welcome to this episode of SelfKind with me, Erica Webb. And today I have a special guest interview for you with my good friend, Lori Curran. So, we are going to dive into that right now. So, hello, and welcome to this episode of SelfKind with me, Erica Webb, and my dear friend, Lori. It is so wonderful to have you back, Lori. Welcome.
Thank you, Erica. It's a pleasure to be back. I always love these chats.
This is your third time on the podcast, so I
Yeah.
think you are probably taking the lead on return visits, which I love. So I can't remember off the top of my head which episodes Laurie was here for in the past, but I will put them in the show notes. But Laurie is joining us again today to talk all things rest, which is, not going to lie, something that I definitely still struggle with. Rest is not something that's ever come naturally to me. I'm not, I always think rest, I think naps, and I don't like napping. I don't enjoy it. So I know we're going to dive into a conversation around what not what naps are, what rest is and the different forms it can take. But before we dive into that, do you want to, in case anybody doesn't know you or hasn't listened to those previous episodes, just give a little introduction about who you are and what you do, and then we'll dive in.
Absolutely. So my name is Lori Curran. I have a business called The Humble Nook, and it is based in Melbourne. You can find me in all the online platforms though. So it's a funny thing when we say where we're based, but then
Yes.
we always have our online platforms. So The Humble Nook is a place, a space, a concept that I created using modalities. And the modalities that I use are massage therapy, so remedial massage therapy, meditation, movement, and yoga practices. And I do these. I use the term body-based practitioner because ultimately what I see as my work is connecting people back to their bodies. So we can do it via these avenues. And so we do it on the table, we can do it through movement, we can do it through recovery. So if someone's coming into the clinic for a more recovery session, we can do it through that. Through this, so how did we get to rest? Through this, there's been a fascination of what happens in these spaces, and that is probably where the Nook part came out when I was naming the business. It was just is that we find these little pockets that we can find space in, that we can find rest in. But what is it? Like what is rest? Because I like to read about rest. I like to practice rest. I like to teach about rest, but it's broad. Like,
Yes.
what exactly is it? And as you were saying, it's not something that comes easy to you. I would like to. Who does it come easy to? Because it doesn't come easy to. It doesn't come easy to me. Like, it is something that I have to continually practice. It is a practice. It is something that I have to check in on and check in on with my body. And so I do feel that the scope of rest, because there is this misperception of rest is just sleep. But sleep is sleep.
Yes.
Like, sleep is golden. That is one thing. But rest is, there's different ways that we can define rest. So is it this, are we stopping? Are we like ceasing action? So stopping the doing. There's definitions, within dictionaries of, it's the refraining from labor or exerting ourselves, to be free from anxiety or disturbance, or to lie, to take support. And I think that these can be all really, is it a noun? Is it a verb?
Yeah.
It is so broad, and I do feel that when us humans get given something so broad, we actually need to see it. We can't just
and
take
experience it.
the word. We need to go,
Mm,
well, that's what it is, and this is how I can do it.
mm.
And so when you say,
Yeah.
I'm not very good at rest, is that because it was never modeled? And
100%.
I
Yeah.
wasn't gonna throw your parents under the under the bus
I
there.
mean, you know my
Uh,
parents, so but I was actually gonna
but it's
say, Laurie, there
but it's
that
not just
it's
parents, is it?
no, it's
Like,
everywhere, and that's what I was gonna
let's just
say.
go. Yeah. I'd love to hear, yeah, what you have to,
Well,
how did that land?
when you said to me, who does it come naturally for? The thing that popped into my mind was if we were able to strip back all of the cultural messaging and conditioning that we've experienced over a lifetime, I would argue that it would come easily because I
Mm,
think it has for our ancestors, right? I think that it did
mm,
because it is that natural response to being in connection with ourselves. And so
mm,
I do think that I have one friend who rest comes very naturally to them, and they will
mm,
tell you that. Like I'm not putting words in their mouth. They would tell you that themselves, and they would say, "When I'm tired, I rest. When I need a break, I
mm,
rest, and then I go back and I do what I need to do." And this person is like, they're like a unicorn because they seem to be undisturbed. Is that even a word? Undisturbed by
mm,
the cultural messaging that the rest of us seem to have been kind of like flattened by, right? And it's so interesting
mm,
to be in conversation with this person because they're so clear that it's just this is what I do, and it's not a question. It's not something I have to convince myself about. I just do what I need to do because it's what I feel I need to do. And I think that is really interesting because, yeah, strip
mm.
back the messaging. Maybe that's all of us. I don't know.
Well, and I think that that is a really beautiful thing, and but I think that what that reinforces is that it's a practice.
Yes.
Yeah. And perhaps, not knowing this person, but perhaps it does come really easy to them. Perhaps they've had really great modeling. I know that
Mm.
the Strozzi Institute, and I use this mapping a lot. They look at it like the sites that shape us. So as if we are an ecosystem, and um, and I know that James Clear says this in Atomic Habits, and I know that we share a bit of a love,
Mm.
for this book. But when something's in front of us, when it's visible, yeah, we're all going to, we can all sort of participate in making that our habit.
Hmm.
So if we think back to ancestors and to more uh, primitive ways and tribal days, there was the work, and then there was the rest. There was this, I feel like, this sense of attunement to our bodies. And what you
Mm.
said about your friend, when I feel tired, I rest. So the first thing that they've got potentially above most people, if there
Yeah.
was, if there was a head start to the race, not that it's a
Yeah.
race, but if
The
there
race
was
to
a
rest.
head start, it's that they're checking in.
Yes.
Yeah,
And they know what they're feeling.
when I feel tired, they are
Mm.
they are feeling it rather than thinking it. Because
Yes.
what happens when we, and I've taken you on a few different paths there, but if this is what I believe is can be my life's work, I'm not going to get this
Mm.
perfect, and I'm not even trying to get it perfect, because I've tried, and that actually became that actually became
Doesn't
more
work.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is
Perfectionism
then,
is exhausting.
it's a misperception.
Mm.
Yeah, that rest is not something else that goes on our to-do list. Yeah,
Yes.
it's not something that goes at the end of our to-do list. I will rest when I've done X.
Mm.
And then I'm going to contradict that with, if you're in the middle of a massive project that your career has built you up for for 20 years, well, then you probably don't totally
Now's not the
rest
time. Yeah.
right in the middle of it. Yeah. But we can put restful practices into our days so that we're not pushing the boulder up the hill. And so that definition of rest was it was the cognitive, it was the what we think rest is, but what is it for our bodies? Yeah, like we're rejuvenating, we're repairing, we're restoring, we're refilling our cup, and that comes from many avenues. But we're also regulating. When we're resting, we're regulating. And the two of them, they're just like this beautiful dance of, if we're resting and regulating, then we just have this, we have capacity. Yeah, there's more space for us to be able to handle life, and there's more space to be able to enjoy things. So, for example, I'm going on a holiday. We holiday at the end of every year, at the end through summer, and this is something that we do as a family. I'm taking a 5-day break in a couple of weeks, but I really I'm really yearning for that break. But I will put practices into my days that feel restful, that are restful. They can be really simple. I took my dog for a long walk the other day and really eyed off, like, the roses are just like off the charts at the moment.
Yes.
Like, this is how I know that I'm like approaching approaching 40, when I'm just like, the roses at the moment are just spectacular. And I mean, in all fairness, I feel like I had probably, like, my 16-year-old self in the florist probably would have come over to your house and been like, Erica, the roses. But like these like homegrown beauties are just like, they're something like next level. And and that, like, this 2-hour, called a girlfriend and was just like, oh, I've got the pooch and I'm going to go for a walk, and we've hit some warmer weather, so that's been pretty nice. And it was slow.
Yeah.
And it was this sensory, like, I'm trying to think of a word that just doesn't overwhelm the situation, but it wasn't an overload. It was just this welcomed softness of beauty.
Presence, right? Like, it's a presence.
Yeah, that just gave that gave my body. I met a girlfriend. We had really soft and deep talks, but there was no pushing for conversation. We saw like an open patch on the grass, and she's like, should we sit down for a little bit? And we just soaked up the sun. We just soaked up the moment. We soaked up the warmth. And so these little pockets that I can put into my day, I cannot tell you how rested. So for me, it was just like, well, that was my rest, but it was also within me. It was this sense of softening, because if you spoke to me on last Thursday or Friday, there was a bracing. There was I have this to do.
Yeah.
There was I could feel like I was holding my jaw, and I had to check in. I was just like, what is it that you really need?
Yeah.
And I truly think that when we can ask ourselves, what is it that I need? Because rest is going to come to everyone in different ways, and that's why the boundary is so big.
Yeah.
But if you say to, I have a 13-year-old, and if you say, well, why don't you just go rest?
No, Mum.
I don't know what it is. And then we have to, well, what is that? Yeah, what is that to that small person?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question there?
Mm,
One of the things that's popping into my mind as you're talking about that is the distinction, I suppose, between like mental rest and physical rest.
mm,
One of the things that I know about you is that you run.
mm,
I do not run unless I'm on the basketball court, but I walk a lot, and I will notice that there are some days where I often walk and listen to something. And then there's
mm,
other days where I'm like, I need the mental rest to,
mm,
I don't physically want to not walk. I want to walk, but it
mm,
feels restful because I'm not tuning into anything else. I'm just present with where I'm at. So I kind of think like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing is that your run could be restful in a very particular way, right? Like a mental
mm,
break from the busy to-do list.
mm.
And then
I
that's going to
was
be different to your physical rest and recovery that might follow a run, for instance. Is that a fair
Yeah.
summary?
So I'm really drawn to Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith, her research on the types of rest that we can
Ah,
that we can have, and I feel that they do have a really great TED talk. There's quite a few publications about
okay.
their
We'll link
work,
that up.
um, because it can just narrow it down. They put it into these categories of physical rest, mental rest, sensory rest, creative rest, social rest,
Ah.
emotional rest, and spiritual rest. Yeah.
Hmm.
And so when we do this, like exactly what you're saying, last week, I hit a point where I was just like, it has been a big month. I knew it was going to be a big month. I've taken little pockets of rest, but I've also done things where I've pushed my own boundaries because do you know what? Like, I'm human. I sometimes
Yeah.
do that. And and we so on the weekend it was just like, so what is it that I need? Yeah. So and I do believe, I'm just going to paint a picture. There could be, let's say, a Friday night, you're exhausted. Yeah. That holiday in 2 weeks, it's 2 weeks away. I'm not there yet.
Yep.
Well, what is it that I can I do? Is a glass of wine going to help?
Mhm.
Yeah. Is a run going to help? Like,
Mhm.
is hopping in bed and just putting on like whatever series and staying
Yes.
there until Monday morning, like, is that going to help?
Yep.
Yeah. Is going out with my friends all weekend?
Mhm.
Yeah. Is running 13-year-old around and just doing things
Mhm.
that are not work,
Yeah.
is that going to help? And I don't know the answer for everyone, but I feel that we can work within these subcategories
Mm.
and really start to define, well, what is it for you? Yeah, because you said, well, you don't run. Yeah, I went for a run. I went for an 11K run on Saturday afternoon, and I don't usually run in the afternoon, but here's what I did. We lit a fire on Friday night. We put like a fire pit,
Drum. Yep.
and I was looking for the word. um, and we lit a fire, and I just looked at the fire. Like, it was a really simple thing to do. Yeah,
Yeah.
to take in the elements. We had a really slow dinner. It was cooked. There was, you know, teenager doing teenagery things, and apparently you can't interrupt some of those things. So we we all met around the fire. We ate dinner, and it was just a really slow night. I went to bed, and I consciously said, I'm just switching off all my alarms.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I slept, and I woke up at around about 8 o'clock. And I was just like, well, there you go. Because I usually run in the morning. So that would have had me wake up at about 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
So I had this sleep in. I moved in the morning. I did like a little bit of more um, like resistant movement
Mm-hmm.
to just strengthen.
Mm-hmm.
We're constantly looking at different ways, and that was really nourishing for me. Yeah, and then later in the day, yeah, child
Yeah.
goes off to the soccer, I go out for a run, and it was still restful. Why?
Mm.
Because it was resting my mental load.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can process a lot of emotion
Yes.
when I'm running.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it helped me move through. It helped me move through that.
Mm.
Yeah, I also feel that running can help me get a little bit creative. It invites in that space for creativity. Oh, that's something that can happen. Oh, that's something. I draw a
Yes.
lot of creativity from trees.
Yes.
Yeah. So even though it wasn't restful, like
Physically. Yeah.
I'm not like horizontal and I'm just staying there. I felt really renewed. I felt
Yeah.
really rejuvenated. Yeah, sure. Like I had a bath that night and I could feel it within my body. Yeah. So what did I do? I didn't go for a run the next day.
Yeah.
Yeah. I rested in other ways the next day. So I
Mm.
rested physically the next day. Yeah. I
Yeah.
guess what I'm going to ask you is, so if we have all these types of rest,
Mm.
so let's just say, and it's funny that I'm the one asking you this question because it's very, very reversed. But like, how rested? That feeling where it's just like, oh, I'm so tired, like everything, like I'm bone tired. I've been in the grind. Insert all these
Mm-hmm.
cultural terms that just like push
Mm-hmm.
us towards our edge, and then we think taking the edge off is going to be like a glass of wine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then one glass becomes two,
Yeah.
maybe three.
Slippery slope. Yep.
Like, and then all of a sudden, like the second bottle's been opened, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, uh, have you ever woken up the next day and you're gone, oh, such a good idea?
Never. Never. It's interesting though, because when you talk about that, it's fascinating to me. I think that hearing you talk about the different categories of rest, I'm like, actually, I'm really good at resting. I am very good at it because I know when particularly like socially, I know when I'm done
Mm,
and I need a break.
mm,
I know when I need to stop, like learning for a little while. I
mm.
know when I'm kind of tapped out. I physically
And
feel quite tired a lot, and I think that's just being a parent still.
mm,
Which will be forever. But I think the thing that comes up for me when you're speaking about this is how uncomfortable we as humans tend to be with a lack of structure
mm,
in terms of what's the formula? How many times
mm.
should I be resting? How should I do it?
Yeah.
What should I, and what you're suggesting and what I 100% agree with is that is not what's going to get you to a real true state of being in relationship with yourself, because there
Well,
is no formula, right?
and I think you just tapped into it, of the being in relationship with yourself.
Mm.
Yeah, because to know rest. Yeah, this I didn't enter adulthood and I was just like the most rested person. I grew up. We grew up in a similar way.
Yeah.
I grew up. The parents are baby boomers.
Mhm.
They have a very go get 'em attitude. Like we
Yep.
had like extraordinary chores charts.
I think
Through
you said torture, and that works too.
through sorry, mom.
Same.
Um, but these values
Mm.
they were important to that generation.
Yeah.
That I'm I will laugh about it in this space, but when we think broader, I think we have to look at the why those values became so important to
Yeah.
them,
Yeah.
because the challenges that they faced then are totally different to
Completely.
now.
Yeah.
But but when we so I was constantly a doer. That's been my nature. And if we were to look at it from the nervous system, I tend to rise into like sympathetic state. That sort of that Deb Dana would refer to it as like that's my home away from home.
Mm,
If I'm going to float somewhere away from that state of flow, that will be the
mhm.
state that I go into. And what does that state mean? So this relationship that we have with ourselves. So I would go into that state and I put that into my work. My first job that I had, I would work a 60-hour week.
I
And
remember.
yeah, right. But it was
Mhm.
so normalized because that
100%.
was just what the job wanted. And not only was it normalized as, well, that's the job that you've chosen, so like that's just what you've got to do. But I mean, apprenticeship wage was awful. So
Mhm.
a 60-hour week wasn't getting me. I think David was earning more at the grocery store on the weekends. um, and but then I took that into adult life, and then when I became a parent, I put it into my parent life. And so I was
Mhm.
constantly outsourcing these moments of rest. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would do a 55-minute vinyasa if I can get a 5-minute shavasana.
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that's what my body wanted.
Mm.
Yeah. And it's not modeled. It wasn't modeled, and it wasn't reinforced, because that go-getter attitude and that, you know, such a dedicated worker and that perfectionistic response, were signs of a nervous system in that sympathetic state,
Yeah.
and they were signs of a culture that has shaped that person. Yeah,
Yes.
the
Yeah.
influences from their friends and their family and the community, and the institutions. Yeah, and I know
So,
that we both know that because we were
mm,
such little grade A students.
oh, we were
Uh,
so willing to please.
please, and so when when we look at rest and say, okay, well, it's really broad.
Mm,
Like, rest for someone could be going to the footy on a Saturday. Now, I
yes.
know that for a lot of people, yourself included, that would not be restful. Yeah, that
Except,
that
can I
would
tell
be
you
like
something, Laurie? Can I
a
tell you something?
yes. I think I
I
know.
I think you
I
probably know.
think I know. I'm pretty
I get
excited.
it now. I get it
Yeah.
now because my favorite thing to do at the moment is go and watch the basketball. I
Mm,
bloody love it.
yeah.
And I'm like, this feels very late in life to be
Mm-mm.
discovering a new passion, but it's fine.
No.
But we go into, John Cain Arena in Melbourne. It is freaking heaving with people. It is so loud. It is chaotic. There's, if you've ever been to the basketball, like there's sirens
Mm,
and there's clicker clackers and and I love it. And it is
mm,
one of my favorite things to do at the moment. And it does feel restful, even
yeah.
though it is literally chaotic. And so I get it now. I actually understand that.
So, okay, two things. One of my favorite things is really when people come back to me and tell me that they finally get sport. I get it. I get it.
Took me a while, but I'm here. I still don't
Uh,
understand football, but I get
I
sport.
but it's
It's the
because
same.
it's not about, like, it is about the sport, but there's so
Mm,
many layers within that. And so
yes.
what you're saying is that you can have those clicker clacky things, and you can have sirens, and you can have teams, and you can have, like, do they have cheerleaders?
Yep.
Yep.
Whole kit and
Like,
caboodle.
you got the whole thing happening, yeah, but what's happening in here? Like, what's happening in your
Mm.
body?
It's
Yeah,
presence for
because
me. It's like, yeah,
because so
yep.
then let's look at, like, if we're present with what's
Mm,
happening, yeah, because anyone can have a nap, yeah, anyone can sleep, but are
mm.
they really going into that? Are they really going into the stages of sleep?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So anyone can go for a
Mm,
walk, but if they're making it tedious and they're making it arduous for themselves, well, is it
yes.
rest? Yeah.
Yes.
If the attitude is, and guilty as charged, um, is if the attitude is I have to do this because I have to rest,
It's wasted.
then is it like, are we actually utilizing our time wisely? Like, is it rest?
Yeah.
If there's mental ruminating, because we want and we know that rumination, we know that the mental load, we know that these are going to affect us in our physiology. They are going to affect
Mhm.
us in our psychology. And once we start playing that game with our nervous system, then we start to shift states. So we can look at
Mm.
uh, everyone when, like, we're asking the question, what is rest, and why, kind of thing, but why not?
Mm.
And I feel like
Yes.
even though we haven't come to a clear answer, there is a little, like, essence rumbling saying, well, are are we allowed? Yeah. Like,
Yeah, and
if rest is so broad, like, we could be asking, what
mm,
is success?
yes, same sort of idea. And I think this is comes back to something I think we've talked about before actually on previous episodes, but one of the things that always struck me was when my kids were particularly not particularly when my kids were younger than they are now and I was in a particularly bad place,
Mm,
I would do the restful things. I would
mm,
physically go and do the massage. I would physically go and have a coffee with a friend, but I was never present to that.
mm,
I was always feeling guilty. I was always feeling ashamed for leaving my kids. I was always feeling some kind of way about the fact that I was doing that thing. So you better believe that that rest had literally zero impact on how I felt. If anything, I felt worse. And so I
mm,
think there's the piece of like, what is rest, but then also how do we, given the conditioning that we've experienced and what we've witnessed, how do we give ourselves the permission to take what is inherently
well,
available to us but maybe
it
feels
is.
unavailable, right?
It
Yeah.
is it is our, like, it is our right. Yeah.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have it. Like, let's frame it. We have it in our systems. Our bodies
Yes.
are designed to rest.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I'm trying to, like, I'm like, what is the best way of trying to, like, like, get people to see it like a slap in the face? Yeah. You would absolutely not buy a Lamborghini, yeah,
Mm.
and then use a screwdriver to try and start it, yeah,
Probs not. Yeah.
or use it as, no, use it as an ornament in your garden,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
Like, if we've got something like Lamborghini's a fast car, use the fast car, yeah.
Mhm.
If we've got a system that is our human body and we know that it is designed to rest, then why are we fighting that?
That's the thing, we
Like,
don't I think we don't know ourselves, right? Like, we don't understand, we get like, think about the things that we're taught at school. We're taught, like,
mm,
sex ed, in terms of our body. We're taught, PE, like physical education, but we're not actually taught how our brains, how our bodies
mm,
work and what they need. And so, sometimes, I know, like I teach through that lens as well of like, here's the science of how your body works and how your brain works,
mm,
because for me that makes a big difference when I recognize that it's not a me problem, right? Like, it's actually just a part of who I am and a part of how I'm put together. That
mm,
makes a big difference to the way that I feel about my body and how it functions. So I do think that's a really big piece of recognizing, hey, here's the reality of a human body, here's the reality
mm,
of a human nervous system. um this is not about your personal failings or successes as a human, but actually like learning to like look after this, you know?
Mm. And I do think from the education department and through parents, it's like, how can we bring it back, or through life? So we look at those sites that shape us, because I just think that
Mm,
they're so beautiful. It's just like, well, how can our family and friends encourage more of those conversations? Yeah, not about like perhaps uh let's say a child comes home, they've had a disagreement with a friend. Yeah, rather
I mean,
than
that
move
happens,
into
yes.
it happens, rather than move into the processes of what happened next, and how do you resolve it. Yeah, they're really great things, but how did it make you feel?
Mm,
Yeah, because the more we can start to cue, I think from a very young age, those interoceptive cues, we can, which are those what's happening inside us. Yeah,
mm,
I know that, and this has taken years to start to really listen to, because I tried to shut it down, didn't work,
mhm,
just rises. But I know if I'm starting to get that feeling where, like, it feels like my breath, like I want to talk, like, and it
mhm,
feels like someone is just sitting at, like, just underneath my diaphragm trying to pull it back down. It's just like it feels like my
mhm,
breath is being caught with every second word.
mhm.
Like it's just like I know that is a cue that I'm either nervous.
Yeah,
Yeah, I do that sometimes.
mhm,
But public speaking is not, it doesn't come as fluid for me. It's something that I'm working on, or something is sitting in my body that just needs a little bit of tending to.
yeah,
Yeah, how can we tend to that? And I think that this is a cultural shift that we can all start to collectively make. It's not gonna
mm,
we're not gonna wake up tomorrow. Your crew who are listening to this are not going to be like, oh well, that's it. Like I'm just going to
done it.
rest,
Yeah,
and we're all done. It's going to be a really slow uh, unraveling
mm,
of the conditioning that we've had, and the modeling that we can continue to do. Yeah, something that uh, came up for me in the pandemic was that I noticed that I wasn't rushing.
mm.
And I was just like, and that's because Melbourne got, had 6
There's
lockdowns.
nowhere to
There was
go.
no rushing, um, but it was a highlight for me, because not only did I not notice that I wasn't rushing, but I could actually feel the difference within my body.
Yes.
Yeah, not only could I feel the difference within my body, but friends actually started to notice it. They were just like, we'd
Mm,
go for a walk, and they'd just be like, you seem different. I can't quite pick it. Yeah. And
mm.
we're in the middle of a pandemic. Like, you're not
Yeah.
meant to be a little bit glowy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
We're
I
suffering
kind
here,
of like,
people.
I was just
Yeah.
like, well, this pace, it's really like, I really enjoy it. And
Mm,
so I think that we have to start asking the questions of, like, why do I feel that I can't rest?
yeah.
Yeah. Like, what is in the way of me and rest?
Mhm,
Yeah. What practices can I incorporate into my day?
mhm.
Yeah, to help me rest. And I truly do believe that that's where mindfulness can come into it, because we can
Yeah,
just that simple mindfulness practice, checking in. Yeah,
yeah,
you can do it for 20 minutes, you can do it for an hour, you can do it for like 3 minutes.
yeah.
Yeah, you create the habit, and also don't try to perfect it, because as I said, quite a few moments ago, I got to Thursday and was just like, yeah, no, you're really going to need a
Missed that.
rest.
Yeah.
Like, you're really going to need a rest. The cues
Yeah.
had started before.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, they had started probably, if I'm being really honest, I think like weeks before.
Yeah.
But I wanted. No, I'm good. It's fine. I've got these things, and so then we need to ask, well, what again? What kind of rest is going to suit us? And I do
Yeah.
think that sensory rest, is going to be a big one for a lot of people, because what you said, I go for a walk and I've got whatever it is that you're listening to,
Yeah.
but you're mentally still taking in. This is relatively, I know, we used to have Walkmans and Discmans, but this is relatively new
Mm-hmm.
to our world, that we could be anywhere and we could be
Yeah.
taking in all this
So much.
information.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a practice that I don't do it when I run, because I do like to listen to things when I run, but when I'm walking, if I'm out with my pooch, if I'm out by myself,
Mm-hmm.
just that bird. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just those, like the crackles of where you're putting your feet, they all add to that. It's like, I'm having a sensory break from screens,
Yeah.
but I'm having like this sensory, like, nature is just such a powerful regulator
Mm-hmm.
for our bodies. So the more we can, take the earbuds out, take the headphones off. I have. I'm hoping, if you're putting these like videos up, I have these, big beats. Yeah,
Yep.
because I would notice that because I can't ride with these, I can't put a bike helmet on,
Yeah, yeah.
and so I can't ride with these, and it just created, and this. I need to apologize that, I know you're not really meant to ride with like earplugs in, um, but it just creates this presence when I'm on the bike.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just,
Yeah.
I ride 15 minutes to work one way, 15 minutes to work the other way. And I'm getting these beautiful nature take-ins.
Mm.
And again, that's physical work, but
Yes. It's still restful.
it's a restorative practice for me. And this is why I do it. It's a restorative practice for me that breaks up my workload
Yes.
to my parent load.
Yeah. Yeah, you're kind of like getting that division in the day. And I think this is I think the thing that just keeps coming back into my mind time after time after time as you're speaking is this idea of like it doesn't have to be always one way, right? So like
Mm.
yes, you're saying go for the walk without the earphones and immerse yourself in nature. But when you go for a walk with your earphones, let that also be okay, right? Like I think
Mm.
this is the thing is
Mm.
it's like recognizing that it doesn't have to always be one way. And that's one thing that like I feel like I've gotten very good at. I certainly haven't, you know, perfected it and I have no
Mm.
intention to. But I'm much better now at just being like kind of breaking into my default and being like, well, this is what I always do and just being like, is this what I need today? You know,
Mm.
and being very flexible around how I show up for myself because I just can't. I mean, you know, I'm just not a planner either. So that probably fits into that part of my personality as well. But it also is because I refuse to force myself to do things that no longer align with how I feel.
Mm.
Even if it's something I love, right? Like even if it's that practice that I'm like, but this is always my go-to. If it doesn't feel like it fits me today, then we're not doing
Mm.
it.
Yeah.
So I think that's
And
really
so
important.
that would, I you touched on a couple of things. The value of, even though that's how it always was,
Mm-hmm.
we hear that, it's just like, well, that's how I was raised. If something is imprinted on us when um, when we're born, or the way that we grow up, the through our cultural conditioning, but it doesn't align with our values,
Mm.
then why are we holding on to it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and like 120% is that's why the parameters. That's why we have this sense of, oh, well, I want to rest, but I don't know how, because it is so broad and it is so individualized. And so I
Yeah.
do feel that when creating rest practices, the same way that it's the same, we put on clothes and we say, okay, well, I want to wear this. Yeah. Are you going to wear a singlet in the middle of winter?
Mm.
Yeah. Like, uh, uh, like, are we going to wear, those little like handkerchief things that you
Yes.
used to wrap around, or like a boob tube?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not going to wear one of those now, but I rocked them when I was 20.
Yeah. They were a
Yeah.
staple when I was 16. Yeah.
so we have these. It's really important to try things on and to notice
Mm.
how it feels. So if you, and this is, I really actually do feel that this is why so many people are drawn to that westernized yoga, vinyasa,
Mm.
sweaty class, because it matches the state that they're in.
Yeah. And it feels more
Yeah.
available. That
It,
makes
it,
sense.
it
Yeah.
works with them. Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
then slowly, you could probably actually, like, I've been that person. I actually
Mm.
think many people have been that person as they move through their yoga practice. They can slowly bring in these practices.
Mm.
Yeah. But we have to start somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you could go to a yoga class and you could be like, oh, like that felt really good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I feel rested, I feel rejuvenated. It really, it filled my cup. Did it feel like
Mm.
I can feel my body, but I feel like I feel a little bit more emotionally available. Yeah.
Mm.
But if you have had social events all week, well, then you're probably not going to plan something on the weekend. Or maybe
Mm.
you are. But I think it really just comes back to noticing what is, how it's feeling within your body, how it's landing within your body. Yeah. Is that, and there's a parallel of uh like what resources us and
Mm-hmm.
what we do as coping. Yeah. Like, what are our
Mm.
coping mechanisms and do they resource us?
Mm.
Yeah. And then tapping into it's just like, well, if you feel like, oh, well, I can't rest or I don't deserve to rest, like, again, tuning in, where are those beliefs coming from? Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you want, create a little bit of a resistance around it. Yeah. Because a lot of the time that we feel that we can't do those things, the driving force is capitalism. The driving force is our worth, our sense of
Yeah.
worth in this world.
Yeah.
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 And I really truly do believe that we can create really beautiful lives, and our work can play a role in that. Like, we can use our work to play a role in that, but it's not our only sense of validation.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. And we have a lifetime to keep practicing, right? Which is cool.
Mm,
I feel like we could go on forever, but before we hit
mm.
record, we were like, let's keep this one shorter. We haven't done that, but that's fine. I didn't,
Almost,
I didn't,
almost.
I didn't have high hopes for us in that regard, because there's so much to say, and I think we could do a lot more on this.
Mm.
That is a really good segue into talking about the fact that you do more on this, and you've got some stuff coming up. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about? I know you've got a whole thing around
Yeah.
rest,
So
and you've got some
I
stuff
am.
coming up.
Yeah. So I've got two main. Uh, events happening next year, one early next year, the 24th and to the 26th of February. It's a 3-day from 9 till 4 p.m. immersion where we address rest and recovery and really focus on addressing fatigue, stress and burnout in both the recovery process and the preventative process.
Mm-hmm.
And we look at the science of sleep, we look at somatics, we look at the nervous system with more depth, and we really dive into mapping out your own nervous system and understanding your nervous system and how rest plays a role in that, along with embodied practices and shared discussions. So
Amazing.
that is happening in February. And then I'm actually going hiking. I've got a retreat in Tasmania from June 6th to 9th, where we'll be learning mindfulness practices that can help us tune back into our body. So we're going to really, the intent of that retreat is to hike the 3 capes of Tasmania. There's some beautiful lodges along the way, so it's a very welcoming hike. Yeah, so you could be an experienced hiker, you could be a new hiker. There's lodges along the way, there's hot water along the way.
Ooh,
and
fancy.
there's all the food is catered. So we'll be doing some mindfulness practice and some understanding of the nervous system along that as well. And then also I'm always available in clinic just for body work.
Yes,
So
amazing. And you're in Melbourne, which
Yes.
I'm asking that like it's a question, but I'm making it a statement. You are in Melbourne.
I
I will pop links
I'm
for
Melbourne.
all of those. Yes, and you're kind of inner city, aren't you? Not inner city, but in a
The
suburbs
clinic
of
the clinic is based in Fitzroy.
Fitzroy. Okay, amazing. I'll put links for everything that we that you've just mentioned in the show notes. And you mentioned a couple of other names as you've been speaking, and I'm going to grab the links for those as well.
Yeah.
So we've got all of those resources. So whether you're, if you want to kind of click through to look at any of that, they'll be in the notes for you to grab. I appreciate you so much, Lori. It is such a pleasure always to chat with you. I mean, we could talk all day, but it would be a very long podcast.
We could.
So I'm sure that third time back on the podcast isn't going to be your last. But thank you so much for joining me again and for sharing, your experiences, your wisdom, your insights. I am so grateful, and I will look forward to talking to you again really soon.
Thanks so much, Erica.